Good evening. I'm Honey Vandercreek. I'm the president of the Tucker Business Association. I'd like to welcome all of you this evening to joining our forum for the Public Service Commission seat, District 4 in the Northern District. Thank you to our candidates and to our moderator and to Stephen Bentley from Thrive for setting this up for all of us. We're hoping that this will be very informative and beneficial to the community as a whole. Tucker Civic Association, in cooperation with the Tucker Business Association, is also hosting it this evening. But unfortunately, their president couldn't join us this evening, so I'm just going to speak in. I'll just step in and let you know his name's Albert Still, and give you a 30-second sketch of who the Tucker Civic Association is. Tucker Civic Association is a volunteer organization for the citizens and the businesses in Tucker. And the Tucker Business Association, we're a 56-year-old organization, and we speak for the business community. So we hope that all of our audience this evening will find this informative, and then I'll let Jonathan Clark, who is our moderator this evening. He's also a board member for Tucker Business Association. And I'll let him introduce the candidates, and then we'll discover how we're going to moderate this evening. Again, thank you so much to all our candidates for stepping in this evening. Jonathan?
Sorry, that's the mantra of 2020. You're still on mute. Please forgive me. I was muted, so now I'm able to speak again. Thank you, Honey, for that introduction. And gentlemen, thank you so much for giving up your time. And members of the audience, we appreciate you all being here. We have just some information I'm going to go through to read through our process. And we want to present this candidate forum, and we're excited to be able to do this for our residents of Tucker, members of the Tucker Business Association and the Civic Association, and anyone who might be interested in hearing from you, the candidate. So again, I thank you for your time. This candidate forum is presented for informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by the candidates and the moderator are solely the opinions of the individuals involved and not necessarily the views of any organization, committee, or other group involved in the sponsorship or presentation of this forum. So like I said, we're very excited to provide this information session to the community. One other thing that I do want people to be aware of is we are, as Stephen mentioned, recording this. So after the session is finished, it will be posted to our YouTube and our LinkedIn, and then we will share it via Facebook and all of our social media. So as candidates, you may also refer to this if you would like. Please feel free. And community members, if you are not able to attend the full session tonight, or for some reason you want to go back to it, please feel free. It will be there for you so that you can really get a deeper understanding should you have further questions for the candidate. In that,
I wanted to say too, the candidates, feel free to share it. In fact, we'd encourage you to share the recording to your own personal or pages for your campaign. So just want to jump in and say that.
Thank you for that, Stephen. Our goal here is to provide information to the community. Audience members will be muted, and we will not open the floor to questions from the public. But one thing we do stress is we may not answer every question the public has tonight. So we do say, if you get a question or if you have something you would like to learn more about from each of the candidates, we recommend you contact the candidate's campaign directly. I'm sure they would be happy and welcome to hear from you, and they can then answer your questions more directly. But like I said, we're going to ask our questions tonight. And if you want, and we don't cover anything that you specifically asked, please reach out to the individual candidates, or please review the video recording of this. Our format is going to be fairly simple. We're going to begin with each candidate having a few moments to introduce themselves. We have 5 questions that we will run through that will help get a little deeper insight onto each candidate's specific position on a couple of topics that are important to members of the TBA, Tucker Business Association, or the TCA, the Tucker Civic Association. We'll get 2 minutes to introduce. We'll get 2 minutes to respond to each question. Stephen will raise his little handy dandy handmade sign when there's 10 seconds left. And then we'll move on. So we do respectfully ask that when you finish with your time, so that we can move on to the next candidate. Questions will be asked in an alternating order. So we will start with the incumbent, Mr. Lauren Bubba McDonald, and then we will move alphabetically to the first challenger, Daniel Blackman, and then to the second challenger, Nathan Wilson. And then we will proceed to rotate in order so that everybody gets a chance to go first at the questions. At the end of this time, we will have a couple of minutes for each candidate to say any closing comments or remarks that they wish. Please forgive me, that took an awful lot longer time than I anticipated to read through all of that, but hopefully now everybody has a better understanding of how we're going to kind of proceed. So without further ado, let's get to the real meat of our show tonight. And as I mentioned a minute ago, Mr. McDonald, as the incumbent, would you take 2 minutes and tell us about yourself, introduce your background and history, and let us know more about you as your introductory comment.
Well, thank you, Mr. Clark, and it's a real pleasure, of course, to be speaking to the Business Association and the Civic Association, because I've been in business all my adult life. I was privileged to be in the hardware and building supply business for 30 years, and then sold out in 1998, and then my son wanted to be a funeral director, and I partnered with him in the funeral business, and we now have 3 funeral homes that he and his wife run, and one in Cumming, Georgia, one in Dahlonega, Georgia, and one in Cleveland, Georgia. I've met payrolls all my adult life. I've met payrolls, and I've gone through recessions in business when I kept my employees paid and didn't take a salary myself. Fortunately, my wife was a school teacher, and we survived on her moderate income at that time. But over those years, I'm fortunate. My customers stayed with me. We provided good service, and I was successful and profitable. Profit is not a dirty word in my vocabulary. My privilege of serving 20 years in the Georgia House of Representatives from the Commerce area. At that time, during that 10th time, I was 5 years chairman of the Industry Committee, which handled all utility legislation. My last 8 years, I chaired the Appropriations Committee, which is the Money Committee, and that was quite a challenge. I was unsuccessful candidate for governor in 1990, but then in 1998, the then governor, Zell Miller, asked me to fill an unexpired term on the Georgia Public Service Commission. Literally, I turned him down to start with, and then he got back with me 3 days later and twisted my arm. And it's been a pleasure serving the people of Georgia on the Public Service Commission. I am an independent commission. I am a person that is a conservative voice and very detailed in my work. And it's a pleasure again to serve the people of Georgia on the commission.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. At this time, if we could, Mr. Blackman, if you would take 2 minutes and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of your background and give us your information to introduce us to you and understand a little bit more about you.
First and foremost, to the Tucker Business Association, to Nathan and to Bubba, I want to thank everybody for putting this on. I do agree. The statement that was made earlier, which is the Public Service Commission does not get the attention it needs. So the opportunity to speak to this association means a lot, and I thank you for the opportunity. My name is Daniel Blackman. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, but I am the son of a United States Army Ranger. I traveled throughout the world and ended up in Columbus, Georgia in the late 80s, and have been in Georgia since 1988. I was recruited to go to Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, Georgia, and have lived here for a long time. I moved to Forsyth County, Georgia, where I now reside, in 2012. And since that time, I have worked really hard, not only as an investor, but as an advisor to nonprofits and to civic organizations around the country as it relates to energy policy, as well as minority contracting. So I take this position and the opportunity to be here on this stage and on this platform very seriously. The Public Service Commission, for those that don't know who are watching this, is a position that regardless of the outcome on November 3rd, has to be taken more seriously by the consumers and the ratepayers, paying attention, understanding that the transparency and the opportunity for us to have a clean energy future is of the utmost importance. So I want to thank you all for this opportunity to speak to you, and I look forward to this spirited debate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Mr. Wilson, at this time, if you would take 2 minutes and introduce yourself, give us some of your background and history so we can learn more about you as a candidate for this position.
Yeah, just unmute yourself, Nathan.
There it is. All right, there it is. Sorry about that. Hey everyone, Nathan Wilson. I'm the former executive director of the Libertarian Party of Georgia. I've lived in Georgia all my life. I'm 35 years old. As a millennial, I feel underrepresented in government, and as a libertarian, I feel underrepresented in government. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. Ecology, energy is kind of a passion for me. I've been self-employed my entire life. I've been working 20 years, mostly in construction and remodeling. I'd studied environmental policy at Kennesaw State University and actually pivoted away from the policy aspect of it because I found that the government relations that was trying to build was mostly just lobbying. And I felt that it was not a really good avenue in order to create change there. So I pivoted, joined the political party, the Libertarian Party, is where I found my home after testing the waters with the other political parties. And since then, I've been a grassroots activist. I've worked with America's Future Foundation, Americans for Prosperity, Young Americans for Liberty, Students for Liberty. I've worn several different hats in those organizations. And I've been trying to reach out to my generation, trying to get them involved, and mostly spent my time educating and informing people on how they can get involved and actually create change on both environment and energy policy, as well as getting people involved with business. I always encourage people to be self-employed and, start their own business and free themselves and kind of liberate themselves. It's freed me. It's given me a lot of peace, and it's got a lot of happiness. And I encourage that with other people in my generation. And so that's my real big focus is, the next generation.
Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you for the introduction. And so now we will start. We have some questions that are targeted towards some specific concepts that our community was interested in learning more about. Mr. McDonald, we will come back to you to start this question first. No, I apologize. Please forgive me. Mr. Blackman, this will be your first question. Let me correct my notes. Mr. Blackman, you'll get this question first, okay? Please describe for our audience your view of the role of the PSC for Georgia residences and businesses.
Yeah, so the Public Service Commission is the regulatory body in the state of Georgia of our electric and gas services. I believe that, providing safe and reliable services by being a commissioner is our responsibility to be in touch with the utility companies and those who are regulated by the Public Service Commission. I think that one thing that I would like to see more of is more consumer and ratepayer interaction. We've seen such a tremendous load on the current commissioners to have to oversee plans such as the Integrated Resources Plan from Georgia Power and other recommendations from utility companies to determine the rates that we pay in our state. And I believe that most people understand it just from a rate making process, but so much more goes into this overall body of government, which includes our ability to encourage more clean energy in the state and to really expand the opportunities across the state of Georgia for individuals that are paying rates to have safe and reliable energy. And I think those are the priorities that I would mention that the Public Service Commission is an overseer of.
Thank you. And one other. thing that I also will mention, I will try to repeat the question between each candidate. And so this would be for Mr. Wilson, if you would, please describe for our audience your view of the role of the PSC for Georgia residents and businesses.
So the Public Service Commission, it seems to be a band-aid to a monopoly created by other legislative branches of the government. And so as a libertarian, I view this as, should the Public Service Commission exist? And if it should exist, what should it be doing? And as of right now, it is regulating mostly the rates at which essentially one electric provider that they do oversee, as well as gas, and looking at those rates. But the one thing, the problem I see with it is it isn't the only group, it isn't the only organization that is affecting the rates in Georgia. So the legislative has changed how the rates which you can buy back electricity from, and the Public Service Commission has been silent about that. They don't seem to interact with the other branches of government, and I feel that it's been a little bit more than a rubber stamp to the energy companies and what they want to do. They have to rely on the information provided by the energy companies in order to set those rates, how much it was going to cost and how long it was going to take in order to build a power plant, which has gone twice over budget and it's taken way too long to do. They had to rely on those expertise. And so there's obviously an information gap that is there. So either the Public Service Commission is sorely underfunded with information, and is, like I said, is a little bit more rubber stamp for the energy companies, and that really needs to change. We need to reevaluate how the Public Service Commission operates in that manner, and that way we can address what is the best way for the consumers for the state of Georgia. As of right now, we're looking at rates possibly going up, doing nothing to adjust or alleviate peak rates, and so those are things that the Public Service Commissioner should be doing, and I don't feel that they're doing that right now.
Thank you. And Mr. McDonald, same question. Please describe for our audience your view of the role of the PSC for Georgia residents and businesses.
Well, thank you very much. Of course, there are 5 members of the Public Service Commission. We are created by the legislature. We do not make the laws. We are a policymaker. Once the laws are made, we have to operate within that framework. We have a limited staff. When I first came on the commission, we had 95 people on our staff, but through time, through budget restraints, we're down to about 72 people on the staff of the Public Service Commission. Our objective, number one, is to make sure that the lights are on, that the flame is burning, and that it's affordable and it's as clean as possible. That's one of the main objectives of the Public Service Commission. We operate in that fashion, working with our utilities, investor-owned utilities, and then we operate in concert, helping our electric membership cooperative members that are partners in the generation process of the state, i.e. the nuclear plants, some of the combined cycle gas plants, and some of the coal plants. So it's a combination of our municipal city utility commitments and our EMC commitments, as well as Georgia Power. And then from the Atlanta Gas Light perspective, we make sure that we work with the markets. The legislature changed in 1998 to a deregulated market. Atlanta Gas Light Company volunteered to deregulate. Liberty Gas is still regulated by the Public Service Commission, and we do not regulate municipal gas at all. We're responsible for pipelines all over the state for transporting natural gas, the safety side of it. We're in charge of the 811, call before you dig. But we have a considerable amount of business on our platter at the Georgia Public Service Commission.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll start with Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson, please define your goals and top priorities for the Public Service Commission in the next term.
One thing I would like to see is a lot more communication done with the legislature. And this is something I've been covering the last few years, where utility companies have been lobbying the state legislature in order to control the So they basically buy back electricity. If you produce electricity, they buy the electricity at non-peak rate and then turn around and sell it at peak rate. So essentially they sell it about 6 cents on 6 cents per kilowatt hour and turn around and sell it for 26 cents a kilowatt hour. You as a producer of that energy do not get to negotiate with that. So that further diminishes the ability to add green energy, energy independence on the house of the homeowner or business. And that also, if we produce more solar energy, we can produce cleaner energy during peak times. By producing that clean energy during peak times, your turbines don't have to turn on coal power plants and gas power plants. So you can then hopefully lower the peak rate. That's the whole reason why you have a peak rate, because the turbines have to turn more in order to produce more electricity, because the demand is more during those times. So I would like to see a discussion with the legislature in order to address that, because if we're looking at the costs, I mean, we have low rates, but when those peak times are still very high, that's still a high bill for a lot of Georgians, particularly poor Georgians in Atlanta. We have hot summers here in Georgia. And so that's a huge burden for a lot of people. And that is something I like to see addressed. That is not a sole part of the Public Service Commission. Government is not an isolated thing. There's many branches to it, and there's got to be communication, because it seems like there's not a lot of communication going on. And like Bubba said, it's the legislature just dictates to the Public Service Commission what they need to do, and they just enforce it. That shouldn't be the only avenue that you should do. You should be able to respond and talk about and discuss that.
And Mr. McDonald, please define your goals and top priorities for the Public Service Commission in the next term.
First off, I do need to take a little bit of issue with Mr. Wilson on his comments about the legislature. When you say Georgia is a state that does not have a renewable portfolio standard, we're not mandated. And because we're elected by the people of Georgia, we have an unlimited amount of flexibility as to how we do. For instance, and I go back to Mr. Clark answering your question there. In 2013, I put 525 megawatts in the integrated resource plan. Georgia Power did not have 1 watt of solar power in that plan. Since that time, we are bumping over 2 gigawatts of solar power. The key to that is the fact that there's no upward pressure on our ratepayers and no state subsidies. It's all market-driven, capital investment market-driven. We're top 10 in the nation in solar development. That's clean. That's beautiful, clean energy. And I promise you 60 years from now, 80 years from now, that sun's going to be shining. And we've taken advantage of the technology and the advancement of solar panels. We buy wind from Oklahoma and New Mexico cheaper than we could build turbines in Georgia, because we don't have sustaining winds in Georgia, except on our mountaintops or off the coast, east coast of Atlantic. So we're making tremendous progress in clean energy in our state. We're decommissioning several coal plants because they have served their use. They're not economically feasible to restructure them. And so that's what's happening. And then our nuclear program, yes, it has been expensive. Who would expect Westinghouse to go bankrupt? Fukushima took a place that had a problem with Toshiba at the problem time. But we're going to finish those plants, and they're going to provide clean, new, affordable energy to the people of Georgia for the next 80 plus years.
Thank you. And Mr. Blackman, if you would, please define your goals and top priorities for the Public Service Commission the next term.
Yeah, so to your question on the goals and top priorities, which we stated, I pushed back against Bubba. I actually agree with Nathan. I think, yes, there is a legislative body and there's a Public Service Commission, but let's be honest, the legislative body in the state of Georgia is the one that approved the development and the construction of Plant Bowl. So the relationships, and I can't speak on behalf of Mr. Wilson, but the relationship between the Public Service Commission and the legislative body has to be stronger, because in my opinion, ratepayers and consumers in the state of Georgia are getting a bad deal. The bottom line is we're in a point in Georgia right now where even if you look at the ability for Georgia Power to recoup their losses due to COVID-19 and the moratorium ending. These are safeguards that are not in place. I don't believe the Public Service Commission can do alone. So here are my priorities. Number one, we need to make sure that low and moderate income families across the state of Georgia, the most struggling and impacted people, especially those who lost their jobs during COVID-19, are protected by increasing and strengthening energy assistance programs, by advocating for those. I understand Mr. McDonald's point on the limitations or the lack thereof with the Public Service Commission, but in my opinion, we've got to start being more creative as we're elected. And the beautiful thing is the Public Service Commission is a 6-year term. We don't have to worry about getting elected on November 3rd and working on our next election going into next year. We have 6 years to do a job that ratepayers and consumers around this state are expecting us to do. The second priority is to make sure that we have more renewable energy in this state. I do believe that we've made an effort, and I'll give Mr. McDonald his credit because I've stood with him and I've seen him do the work. I think we should be a little bit more aggressive, and we should not be in a position now where we are overly charging consumers for the construction of our nuclear project. And the last goal that I have is to make sure that consumers are no longer charged in these aspects. We must have a cap so that as these overruns continue, consumers are protected at the utmost and are protected by commissioners that they hire to do their jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. For our third question, what are your, I'm sorry, Mr. McDonald, we'll ask you to go first on this one. What are your thoughts on clean energy and its future expansion with a thought to identify alternative low-cost energy sources?
Well, I would have to reiterate what I just got through saying a few minutes ago. We're in the process of building 2 new nuclear plants, 1,100 megawatts of solar power in each plant, which is going to provide clean and very cheap energy to the people of Georgia for the next 80 plus years. We're the first in the nation over 36 years of building nuclear plants. Who would ever thought Westinghouse would go bankrupt? Who would ever thought that Fukushima would happen with a tsunami and Toshiba would have the problem on their partnership with it? Who would ever thought that we would have the virus? The Public Service Commission didn't cause the virus. It has had an effect on the craft labor in that environment building the plant. Yes, it has. But they're probably the safest place in the state of Georgia. When you go to work, you're tested constantly through the day. And those employees have stayed with the unions, have supported the Public Service Commission. The unions have supported the Southern Nuclear on the construction of it. And so the progress is making great strides in those plants. The best partner that solar energy has today is nuclear, because when the sun is not producing the energy through solar panels, the nuclear is producing it, and our combined cycle natural gas are producing. What we are having and what we have, and you look, when you have an industry that looks at the state of Georgia for the prospect of a manufacturing company, one of the first 3 questions they're going to ask is, what is my energy cost and how reliable is it? Georgia shines very much in those categories. And that's why we are enjoying being the 7th year in a row, the best state in the nation to do business with. Mr. Wilson, we've cut out a lot of regulations that you and I agree that process on. But I'll tell you right now, you start going over to the legislation and start telling them what to do, they'll show you where Tony hid the wedge real quick.
Thank you. And Mr. Blackman, if you would, what are your thoughts on clean energy and its future expansion and work to identify alternative low-cost energy sources?
I find it interesting with Mr. McDonald referencing Georgia being a great state to do business in, which I think Metro Atlanta has done a phenomenal job. But when you travel around the state like I have, and you see counties and communities like Albany, Georgia, Early County, Georgia, when you look at Richmond County, look at areas around the state that would not agree with the statement that's been made. We like to tout that Georgia is one of the best places to do business, but that shouldn't be contingent on a zip code within the Metro Atlanta region. We've got to begin to expand those opportunities. This is agricultural state. A lot of our friends in rural Georgia are struggling because they don't have access to solar. Community solar is not an option in some of these areas. And you look at the extreme weather that we have faced over the last several years. I believe in mitigating the climate crisis and fighting against it. We need to be working with our farmers and landowners across the state on agribusiness, on making sure that biofuels are added into this option. Being more aggressive around solar is obvious, something that I want to work on. I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club and other organizations that energy economy. So I believe that we've got to make sure that the same prosperity that we're referencing is shared throughout this state. And the only way we do that is by expanding energy opportunities and advocating for these communities that have been, quite frankly, left out of the conversation to be a part of these opportunities. The last thing that I'll say is that it's my very humble opinion that the next public service commissioner, which I'm working extremely hard to become, has to make sure that they get out of that building on 244 Washington Street and go down and around the state to make sure that each and every one of these communities that are hit the hardest understand that their public service commissioners are not only listening, but working hard to bring those same investments to their communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 4. And Mr. Blackman.
I'm sorry, you allowed Nathan to answer that question.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson. I do apologize. Thank you all for keeping me honest. I thank you, Mr. Blackman, for correcting me. Mr. Wilson, question number 3. What are your thoughts on clean energy and its future expansion, and to identify alternative low-cost energy sources?
Well, like Bubba mentioned, I've spent the last 10 years butting heads with the legislature. I don't like politics. I've been a business owner for, it's self-employed for 20 years. So I'm all about leadership. So butting heads with the legislature is just what I'm there for. I'm a libertarian. I want to see less government. And I want to make it clear, I support nuclear too, because it is a clean, steady, reliable energy source. Our grid in general cannot support a fully solar system because we have no way to store that energy. We don't have a CESIF machine. We don't have batteries. We don't have the infrastructure in place. And we need to see a direction with the energy companies in order to put those in place. So those are options that we can have. But when you're talking about the legislature, they have ad valorem taxes on solar panels. You have the rates are set by the legislature in which you can sell back electricity. That's not a market force. You eliminated the market. You have a monopoly. So there is no market there to compete. You are the only person that can compete with them at that point, because you can't, unless you set up an EMC, that's the only thing you can compete with them. So we need to eliminate those barriers to individuals and businesses in order to compete with the energy companies. And that's the only way you're going to see the alternative resources for seeing what is the most viable for business. We have different type of wind turbine technologies that are out there that can be used at a smaller scale, but then you have zoning laws and you have other type of code restrictions in order to put those in place. And we have to look at those on the legislative side and on the different cities and municipality side in order to remove those restrictions. I have to applaud the legislature for removing a barrier for HOAs could not bar solar panel farms being put on houses. So I applaud them for doing that, but we need to see more of that. And I think the Public Service Commissioner needs to lead on that.
Thank you. And now for question number 4. Again, I apologize, Mr. Wilson. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Blackman. COVID-19 has touched all facets of America. What initiatives has or could the Public Service Commission do to ease the stress for taxpayers and businesses?
I heard you say taxpayers, sir, and then you cut out. Can you repeat the last portion?
Yes, sir. Taxpayers and businesses.
Oh, that's great. So I think that, and let's be honest, it was stated earlier, this time last year, no one was thinking about an entire economy being shut down and tens of millions of people losing their jobs. So to be fair, we are in a position where I do believe we should have been more prepared for as a state, as a commission, and as those who are elected officials, because there are a lot of things that have exposed our state, such as lack of access to wireless broadband, which challenges not only our children in K through 12, our college students, but then also our small businesses to be able to provide that. So, obviously advocating for those are, of the utmost importance. But, I'll be honest, I think that we need to start looking at alternative forms to, one, extend. The moratorium should have been extended. When you look at the fact that Georgia has not fully recovered, there are very few states that are not just open, but that are recovering at the pace that we would like to see it happen. So I think we need to really rethink how we would create spaces for the moratorium, which ended on July the 15th, to have been extended. It's something we can't do now. It has already been voted on. But I think that we need to really hold utility companies accountable. I'll give credit to Georgia Power on their repayment plan. I think that's important, but we've got to take more of a lead in what we're trying to accomplish there. And I believe in utility stabilization. I think you have to look at public and private partnerships locally that can allow some of these utility companies to make sure that they're offering programs and incentives that are making sure that there's relief for ratepayers that are hit the hardest. A lot of counties in Georgia, I cannot stress enough, have not recovered. And for working families and for our brothers and sisters in the labor movement that are working hard and trying to keep food on the table, we've got to do a better job of making sure that programs and assistance is accessible by speaking to the leadership and the executives at these utility companies that are making the decisions that impact the communities in which we live.
Thank you. And Mr. Wilson, COVID-19 has touched all facets of America. What initiatives has or could the Public Service Commission do to ease the stress for taxpayers and businesses?
Well, the Public Service Commission should really be putting some pressure on making sure any type of taxes and any type of barriers are out of the way, so that people can, like I said, start competing and producing their own energy. I think a lot of people have seen what they can deal with. So long term, not from the immediate future, but long term can address their own energy concerns at their own house and living situation. But I would like to see, like I said, this is more a libertarian position. I would like to see something more voluntary. I don't like government mandating things to businesses, but I would like to see speak out to these presidents, CEOs who are running these energy companies and come up with ideas, something voluntary that they can do. If we can find a way for other people to pay for someone else's energy, if we can find different ways for those individuals who run those businesses to take pay cuts in order to offset those costs. The payment plans have been excellent. The deferment plans have been excellent. Maybe adjusting a lower rate, short term, or prorating the previous rate that they have to pay back. I would like to see something voluntary. I really hate seeing that, us saying, you can't make any money, or you have to make, hard financial decisions long term because of this, because it's hit everyone. It has affected everyone. The energy companies are affected just as much as anyone else, because there's a lot of businesses going out, and then different competitions going in there. So I don't want to put all the blame on the energy companies for this, but they do provide those, and I'd like to see a voluntary solution to that.
Thank you. And Mr. McDonald, COVID-19 has touched all facets of America. What initiatives has or could the Public Service Commission do to ease the stress for taxpayers and businesses?
Well, we have very little to do with the taxes of businesses. Taxes are done by the federal legislature or the state legislature. We don't impose taxes. We do have controls over rates and payments. And during this COVID-19 situation, we have certainly followed as far as we can on a path of making it as comfortable and as painless for people under stress, under budget, and all of those issues that come keeping the lights on or the heat on through this period of time with the air conditioners on. There is no free electricity. Somebody's going to pay for it, or free gas. My friend Daniel, his party wants the Green New Deal. I'm telling you what, if you have that, you won't even be, if you can get electricity, you won't be able to afford it. That's not the case we're gonna have at the Georgia Public Service Commission. We have payment plans, we have eliminated penalties or late payment fees, made it as comfortable as possible for people to get their electricity or their gas. By doing this, your businesses are able to continue to work, to be able to operate. We have industries that have firm commitment, or we have interruptibles. Those industries contribute back to our Universal Service Fund for the purpose of expanding like gas lines throughout the state to create and build more industries. In the southern part of the state, in the north, in International Paper, a big pipeline to put in a new boiler, which they've got 500 plus employees up there. And I could take you to Glenville, Georgia, where the Rotary Company is a company that makes blades, the biggest blade company in America. And a little pipeline let them employ 25 more people in Glenville, Georgia. That's a lot of people employed. So the work there goes on, and we're continuing to make things like that happen for Georgia.
Thank you. And our last question, our fifth and final question, Mr. Wilson, we'll start with you. Plant Vogtle has been publicly discussed for years. What are your thoughts on this project in its current status and future developments?
I do think we definitely need to complete it. I mean, I've been asked that should we, you know, as a boondoggle, should we, you know, stop where we're at? We're too far along in it. We are way too far in the game to restart or find a different alternative because we have an energy need. And so if we stop production on this plant now, then we're gonna have to look at something else. And that's gonna be a whole reset. We should have maybe cut it off sooner with all the issues that we saw well before it doubled in price, and then looked at different alternatives then. But I do want to see Plant Vogtle finished. It will provide quite a bit of energy. Hopefully it'll be able to help replace some of the more toxic type of energy producers that we do have. And I would like to see rates, you know, go down because of it, because one of the biggest draws to it when the selling point with it was it's going to lower production or lower the cost of production for energy. So at bare minimum, I'd like to see not prices go up, but I keep hearing that the energy companies want to increase rates once this plant's finished. So that means, you know, they're more money on the increase, but also the difference in lower energy production costs. So they're going to, you know, make a huge windfall there. At bare minimum, keep the energy costs the same. They still make a lot more money because they're saving costs there. They're not producing more waste, and we get cleaner energy. And that's what I would like to see. Like I said, I would like to see more nuclear, but obviously we need to reevaluate how this is done, because this was it was a train wreck, and it needed to been maybe had a second pair of eyes on it at bare minimum.
Thank you. That was the 10-second sign. So
yeah,
sorry.
I didn't have too much more. So
there we go.
Just making sure y'all are paying attention.
That's it. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. McDonald, Plant Vogtle has been publicly discussed for years. What are your thoughts on this project in its current status and for future developments?
I totally agree with Mr. Wilson that the project needs to be completed. I totally agree with Mr. Wilson that it is clean and cheap energy once it's productive, it's in production. I totally agree with Mr. Wilson that it has value to a long-term energy source that's clean for the people of Georgia. I totally agree the fact that Georgia Power only owns 45.7% of that. We regulate Georgia Power. EMCs own over 30-something%. The municipal electric cities own a process in there. Dalton Utilities own 1.7% of the project. One EMC in the state, one of the largest EMCs in our state, owns 22% of that plant. So when you're talking about the need to keep it going, or whether it's being managed correctly, or the great minds that are operating of the boards, you're talking about people that's 6 million EMC consumers and 2.5 million plus Georgia Power consumers. Those folks are not just making rash decisions off the hip. They're making very deliberate and thoughtful process in getting this plant completed. I totally agree with Mr. Wilson, the hiccups that we've had. If there was a magic wand that we could have waved and gotten over that, we could have done that. But we've tried very diligently to stay with the program, to be as efficient with that. There's $400 million worth of prudency review will be coming up in the very near future. That's why this voice is needed, this independent voice of Bubba McDonald on the Public Service Commission, because I have the understanding of where we are and where we've been in these. So I'll be able to participate strongly in those prudency reviews that will be on the commission's platter very soon.
Thank you. And Mr. Blackman, Plant Vogtle has been publicly discussed for years. What are your thoughts on this project in its current status and the future developments?
Plant Vogtle has become the most fiscally irresponsible decision in the history of our state. Let's just be very clear. The only of the three candidates on this call, the only one that has been there for every Vogtle monitoring report, for every single argument, for every regulatory process, has been Bubba. And, you know, while I agree that this project is so far along that, you know, I don't see a way for us to be able to stop or revert or how that would have a positive impact. What I don't agree with is looking at this as if there can or should not be accountability. There is no magic wand, Mr. McDonald. There is no way we can wave off what has happened or what hasn't happened. What we know is that decision after decision, time after time, and hearing after hearing, it has gone not in the favor of ratepayers who have had to pay construction work in progress and nuclear cost recovery, but for those individuals that are not shareholders of Georgia Power, that have borne the most hard and burdensome effects, there is no going back for those individuals. And every single decision and every vote that has been made has caused a tremendous amount of hurt and irreparable pain for communities that, quite frankly, are just not going to recover. There are folks that have been paying for this for the last decade, including schools and churches, that are not going to be able to recover because they have too much skin in the game. So it's not my responsibility or role at this moment to say what I would have done or what I should have done. I mean, I don't think anyone could have seen where we are today from the beginning of this process. But if you see something ongoing and time after time, hearing after hearing, docket after docket, we're seeing a consistent direction that's taken us down the wrong path. I think decisions should have been made in a much different way. And for those who are watching this, who are fiscally conservative, at some point, we have to understand that when a decision is being made to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. And we have to hold more individuals accountable. So I am happy that it's in the papers. I'm happy that it's getting more information. I'm happy more people are thinking about it. But at this point, a ratepayer should not pay another dime into any overruns that happen at Plant Vogtle. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have this discussion and this conversation.
Thank you. Gentlemen, at this time, that ends our 5 questions that we have for each of the candidates. What we will do is now we'd like to give you a moment or two. I think we have 2 minutes on the timer for you to make any final closing summation, discussions or presentations, bits of information for us to take as we finish and close out our evening tonight. Mr. McDonald, as we started off with our introductions, we'll start off with you for our closing. So if you'll provide our closing comment.
Well, I thank you very much, and I really appreciate the Business Association for giving us this opportunity. I want you to understand very clearly that the Public Service Commission is an open forum. All these hearings that we have on the Plant Vogtle are wide open to the public. I don't recall seeing either Mr. Blackman or Mr. Wilson at any of the many, many hearings that we've had at the Public Service Commission discussing the nuclear plants. Beyond that, we won't have in Georgia rolling brownouts and blackouts like they have in California. We have a substantial, solid energy program in our state. Yes, we are always available to making it better. We're doing that with electric vehicles and charging stations. We're doing that with community solars that are out there. The electric membership cooperatives have community solars programs in their facilities, as well as the municipality. So these types of clean energy programs exist in Georgia, and they're doing it voluntarily. We're not any mandates to do that. We don't have that mandate position that some other states have. So with that said, we are reliable, we are clean, and we are affordable, and we're going to stay that way in Georgia. And I appreciate the people of Georgia for allowing me to serve on the Georgia Public Service Commission. And as we go between today and the rest of this week and Tuesday, I would appreciate your vote, continuing to let Lauren Bubba McDonald continue to work for you on the Georgia Public Service Commission. Thank you very much. And thank you for the association for this opportunity.
Thank you. And Mr. Blackman, at this time, if you would take a minute or two and provide us any summary comments or closing discussions that you'd like to share, so that when we leave, we can take something away from our conversation tonight from you.
Yeah, well, since my name was mentioned by Mr. McDonald, he must be suffering from amnesia. I've been there since 2013, going to meeting after meeting. Have I been at every single hearing? Of course not. I don't think any Georgian, especially those that don't live in the metro Atlanta region, can be at every meeting, especially those who are working extremely hard to make sure that they can pay their rates. So I find it disingenuous that he would say that. I find it disingenuous that he said back in April that the $1,200 that the president gave to ratepayers around the state should have somehow gotten everybody caught up on the rates they were paying. So Mr. McDonald, I have been there. And if you look at the sign-in sheets, I've signed my name over 10 or 15 times to speak on behalf of communities and civic organizations. For those of you that are watching, my name is Daniel Blackman. I am running to be your next public service commissioner in the state of Georgia. And the reason why is because we need someone that understands the fundamental difference between working on behalf of utility companies and being a fair and balanced regulator. Someone that understands that there are communities and counties and families that have not recovered. This is not about a Democrat or Republican. Mr. McDonald likes over and over again to compare me to the Green New Deal and to other plans that he feels that I'm going to push, when she knows and I know most of the Green New Deal has nothing to do with the Public Service Commission. So my response to Mr. McDonald and to everyone watching is to follow the record. Mr. McDonald has a very long and extensive history as an elected official. And all you have to do is follow the money. 82% of the money he has raised has come from individuals and organizations in which he has regulated. So instead of us going back and forth, let's look towards the future. Let's look towards innovation, new ideas, and progress, and especially an individual that wants to put ratepayers and consumers ahead of profitability. Our utility companies have every right to be profitable and successful, but our ratepayers should also have someone that stands up to them when decisions are made that adversely impact them and their communities. Vote Daniel Blackman on November 3rd. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Mr. Wilson, if you would take a minute or two for your closing comments and providing any information you'd like for us to take away from the evening from your vantage point. So thank you, please.
Thank you. Like Mr. Blackman said, we do need to think of the future. Like I said, I'm a millennial. I'm on the upper end of it. I've served as executive director of the Libertarian Party. I've served in many different leadership roles, helped start many businesses across the state. And I'm about leadership. I know about 60% of Americans who register to vote do not participate in politics regularly because they're sick and tired of this essentially false dichotomy that's been presented by the two major parties. And you see that right now, that I pull from both Mr. McDonald and Mr. Blackman with ideas that need to be presented, because I look at it as a leadership perspective. We keep blaming, well, this is our department, or this is my department, and not mess with the legislature. It's government. It is one entity at the end of the day, with different people over different departments. And we need to recognize that it isn't going to be one person fixing everything. That's not how this works. But a leader looks at how paints a vision of the future and brings people in that direction. And you have to do that with the citizens, you have to do that with the businessmen, and you have to do that with other politicians as well as the other people on the Public Service Commission. And that's what I bring. That's my experience. And that's what I've been doing the last decade, is reaching out, talking to civic organizations, talking to legislatures, and reviewing these processes that we have and getting people on board and painting a clear vision of what we want and what we need. And it isn't just my vision. I talk to other people. It's not just my business. I talk to other businesses. I don't make decisions solely on myself. We are not islands. We are not just two dichotomy of parties. We're not just two different colors. There's, millions of Georgians that, have, live here, play here, work here. They raise their kids here, and people who are looking to come here. And that's what I'm looking to represent. I'm looking to represent the future, and I'm looking to represent the next group of ideas that are going to be presented out there. And that's what I'm bringing to the table. I'm not the only libertarian on the ballot. Please review every single libertarian out there. Thank you.
Thank you. And gentlemen, I'd like to say thank you for your time this evening, as you were so gracious and wonderful in providing the answers that you felt best represent your opinion and position, but also you stayed within time limits. And I want to say thank you for all of that. I think this was a great event. I know I learned a lot more about the PA Public Service Commission than I knew going into it. And I know and hope that our audience does as well. So please, for the members of the audience, this will be recorded and it will be posted to our social media. Please review it, come back to it, take a look at it. And if you have any specific questions that we did not answer tonight, we do recommend and suggest that you reach out to the individual candidates as at their campaign locations. And at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Honey, and again, say thank you, gentlemen. I've enjoyed this, and I'll turn it over to Honey.
Thank you, Jonathan. I agree with Jonathan. I think that I'm hoping that everybody learned a lot more about the PSC than they had thought of in the past. When we were asking for questions, we said, "What do you think?" And they go, "I don't know. What do they do?" Except for rates, that's the only thing they could think of. And but I truly appreciate you guys have certainly got a passion for this, and I think this will benefit all Georgia regardless of who wins. And so good luck to all of you. I'd like to thank Jonathan Clark for moderating, Stephen Bentley is our timekeeper and our IT guy, our audience for joining us this evening. And again, this will be on our YouTube channel. And if you go to www.tuckerbiz.org, you can see the recording, and there should be a link there. Is that correct, Stephen?
Yeah, we'll have it on our past events page.
Okay.
Also, we'll post it to our Facebook. And again, if all of the candidates would please post it to whatever social media you have, or if you have your own YouTube channel or anything like that, we'd encourage you to do that. And I would just like to say, we've done a lot of these candidate forums, and never have I seen the people follow our time limits as well as you guys. Everybody speaks over, but y'all did great. So not that I care, but I just noticed y'all were great. Very succinct and to the point. You answered good questions well. So thank you for all the time.
Great job. Great job.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all very much. And my door's open all the time.
Thanks, Bubba. Thanks, Daniel. And thanks, Nathan.
Everybody.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And good evening, everyone.